Hello everyone, welcome back. It is day 2 of Banned Book Week, and so we will be discussing chapters 8 through 14 of A Time to Kill by John Grisham. Today my drink of choice is some chai tea with just some sugar. I have some Tazo? I say Tazo, T-A-Z-O, chai tea, and it is very delicious. So I really only have 4 major things to talk about today, and first up we have all of the reporters and all of the celebrity status of both Carly and Jake and a couple other people involved, and that's going to be really interesting to follow throughout the rest of the story since we still have a good chunk left. And so it's interesting to kind of see the celebrity status of Carly, Jake, everyone involved, and all of that, and compare that to internet fame today. That's kind of a comparison that I've been drawing, and I think it'll come up later. Even though this was published in 1989, there's still some definite parallels to today, even though that was almost 30 years ago. Another thing I want to talk about plot point wise, and that is Carly's indictment. And that was probably the most major thing that happened over the course of these 7 chapters, is that he has officially been charged with capital murder and, aggravated, assault of an officer or something for shooting Looney. I forget what specifically that was called, but yeah, he gets charged with the murder of Cobb, the murder of Willard, and then for shooting Looney too. Nothing's really come of that other than the fact that he has been indicted. And so we'll have to follow that into tomorrow, Wednesday, and so on. One thing I wanted to point out that didn't even occur to me yet, but I think someone said something similar in dialogue, and when they said it, I'm like, oh yeah. And it's that when Carly shot Cobb and Willard, they had not been convicted yet. I know that's kind of a weird point to bring up, even though, we the audience know that they did it, but maybe not everyone, not every character does maybe, so it's kind of like a dramatic irony kind of a thing. I don't know, it's just a point that I thought I'd make since it is kind of important to the story, and I do think it is something that should be brought up in our discussion. And then the fourth and final thing I want to bring up is that the Klan, the KKK, is involved now, and I think that will be a driving force throughout the rest of the book. And one thing I want to note is the use of the N-word in this section as well. I mentioned yesterday that I would be keeping tabs on the use of language in this book, and the N-word is used very profusely in chapter 13. I don't know if you can see that, but I circled every instance that I caught of it, and sometimes I don't catch things. And like I said yesterday, where it is used in that section of the book is either by a racist character or to a racist character, or in the narrative from the perspective of a racist character. And so that was kind of my seeing of it. But here, this entire chapter, chapter 13, is entirely from the perspective of someone in the KKK. So they will use that language even if you disagree with it, even though you probably should never, ever, ever say that. That is within this person's beliefs, and it's something that should be considered when analyzing this book. Another thing to do with language, I did catch a use or two of the word boys when referring to Cobb and Willard, as I mentioned yesterday. I thought that was kind of an interesting use of language. Also in chapter 13, coming back to the word boy, Jake is referred to by the KKK members as a boy. I forget who specifically says it, but in that chapter I have a note that someone called him a boy. And I think that's another interesting use of that word, because I don't know, it paints the picture that they're naive, they're stupid, they're dumb, they haven't grown up. And that was kind of my point with when they called Cobb and Willard boys. But now that Jake is also being called a boy, I think that speaks to the character's perspective and the character's interpretation of him. So today's video was kind of shorter, not really a ton happened in this section, if I'm honest, besides like those few big things that I touched on. One thing I will say about this book is that it repeats itself a lot, which is kind of annoying, just from a book review standpoint, not from like the Banned Book Week book thing, just from that side of my brain, the like book reviewer side of my brain. I'm like, it's a debut novel, so I can cut John Grisham a lot of slack than I would for, like, say, his 20th book. But it is something I just thought I'd mention because I had noticed it. You know, like someone tells a character something and then that character has to tell another character the exact same thing, and then it just keeps going until we've heard the same story like 4 or 5 times. And in storytelling, I think that's kind of unnecessary, especially when you're dealing with a book this thick. That's just something I'd point out. It really has nothing to do with like the banning of this book, really, but just thought I'd mention that since it is something I noticed. Also, we have our first spine breakage today during Banned Book Week. As much as I try not to, I do bust the spine of every single book I've ever done for Banned Book Week and during Banned Book Week. I don't know, as much as I highlight and annotate, I do like to keep like the exterior of my books nice. But for Banned Book Week, this is a special occasion. I bought this book specifically for this. And so I think they're just badges of honor from being chosen as a Banned Book Week book. So that's really all I have to say on today's reading. Tomorrow we are discussing chapters 15 through 21, and I'm looking forward to talking about that with you for day 3 of Banned Book Week. I hope your tea is just as delicious as mine is, or coffee, or soda, or whatever you are consuming at this moment. Cheers, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Specs, hugs, rock and roll. Love you.